I have a quiet moment alone, so I'm going to take a break from preparing my gospel doctrine class lesson for this coming Sunday and make an impromptu video uh, discussing a few points of 3rd Nephi chapter 11. All this beside the project I'm working on, a video that I want to share with you all, something I'm working on, which I'm hoping to have done by by the end of the month, hopefully by before the holidays. But anyway, um, 3rd Nephi chapter 11. I want to start out with verse 1. And now it came to pass that there were a great multitude gathered together of the people of Nephi round about the temple which was in the land Bountiful. And they were marveling and wondering one with another, and were showing one to another the great and marvelous change which had taken place. So I'm going to stop here for a moment. I don't know how many people have taken any time to ponder this verse. Okay, throughout the entire land of Zarahemla, Lamanite lands, Nephite lands, and then even other lands farther up north where people had migrated, lands had changed. Moronihah was buried by a mountain, was covered by a mountain. Other cities were destroyed, some buried in the sea. But here in the city Bountiful, a great and marvelous change had taken place. And I don't believe it's referring to the land of Bountiful, not even the city Bountiful. I believe this great and marvelous change took place with the temple itself. Way back in first book of Nephi, or way in the beginning of the Book of Mormon, when Nephi builds a temple, he builds it after the manner of the building of the Temple of Solomon. There were materials that he could not use because they were not available, but he did his very best to make the temple as close as possible to resemble the temple at Solomon, so that they could perform the same ordinances and offerings and so on and so forth. And so eventually when the Lamanites took over and King Mosiah took the people of Nephi and fled up northward and discovered the land of Zarahemla, they built a temple there as well. And I'd like to think that they built the temple again after the manner of Solomon's temple. And then eventually when the Lamanites expanded and then eventually took over the land of Zarahemla, well, then you have some of the more faithful Nephites that migrated to the land Bountiful, and there they built another temple. And I believe it was also, to their best ability, the temple that they built there resembled the same temple, meaning the temple of Solomon. And so they did their best to replicate the temple back at Jerusalem according to the scriptures, according to the design as given in the Old Testament. So that brings me to the question, what was this great and marvelous change? Well, if you think back to the New Testament, when Jesus Christ was crucified and when he died, a great and marvelous change took place with the temple, and it had everything to do with the veil. Now, if I'm not mistaken, if I remember correctly, the temple veil was a very heavy curtain. It wasn't just a very dainty, translucent material like what you might see today in some temples, but it was a very heavy duty material, very large from top to bottom. I'm not sure what all the design parameters were, but that veil was rent. And I believe that the same thing happened here at the Temple of Bountiful. And so the people here are, in verse 2, they were also conversing about this Jesus Christ, whom the sign had been given concerning his death. They're starting to put two and two together. These are the more faithful people of the Nephites. Okay, there's Nephites still spread all over the land, Bountiful, everywhere. And when we read the, I think it's 3rd Nephi chapter, I don't want to guess, 14, 15, or 16, when before Jesus Christ ascends up into heaven, when he tells the people to ponder the things he had said, we read that there were about 2,500 people, men, women, and children. And so this was before they went in noising abroad the arrival of Jesus Christ. So there were just a few people that just happened to be at the right place at the right time, because that's who they were. They were a very faithful, very devoted, temple-going people. And so here they found themselves. And while they're marveling at this change that had taken place, Jesus Christ descends, and he declares himself. They didn't understand him. 3 times he spoke out of the heavens, and when he finally spoke for the 3rd time, they understood. When he set foot on the earth and declared himself, then they fell to the earth. And so we read continuing throughout this chapter, and he said in verse 14, "Arise and come forth unto me, that ye may thrust your hands into my side, and also that ye may feel the prints of the nails in my hands and in my feet, that ye may know that I am the God of Israel, and the God of the whole earth, and have been slain for the sins of the world." So these were the most faithful people that anticipated Christ's return. They were faithful, they were dedicated, they did everything possible to be at the right place at the right time, because they were attuned to the prophecies. They had the same access to the scriptures that all the Nephites had, all the Lamanites, all the people, but they were the ones that were the most devoted. And still, even then, we'll go into this later, they still struggle to understand when Jesus Christ began introducing the words of Isaiah to them and their place in the covenant that which the Lord made to Abraham. But now I'm getting way ahead of myself. Jesus Christ then one thing I find interesting is that in verse 22, Jesus Christ, well, I'm going to read it. "And again the Lord called others and said unto them likewise, and he gave unto them power to baptize. And he said unto them, On this wise shall ye baptize, and there shall be no disputations among you." Okay. Backing up to verse 21, when Nephi went up and bowed before the Lord, kissed his feet, and Jesus told him, "I give unto you power that ye shall baptize this people when I am again ascended into heaven." So what was Nephi doing all this time? He was baptizing people who were repenting. His father Nephi was baptizing people who were believing in Samuel the Lamanite's words. So these are people that had already been baptized unto repentance, and they already had authority to do so. Nephi was already authorized. He was the watchman. He was the prophet. And so Jesus Christ is here again, giving him authority to baptize again. So there is a new baptism. And then Jesus Christ begins to expound the purpose of baptism unto repentance. And without going into the details of the rest of the chapter, you can read that yourself. Jesus Christ declares that this is his doctrine. Verse 39, going farther ahead, "And verily, verily I say unto you, this is my doctrine, and whoso buildeth upon this, buildeth upon my rock, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against them. And whoso shall declare more or less than this, and establish it for my doctrine, the same cometh of evil, and is not built upon my rock, but he buildeth upon a sandy foundation. And the gates of hell stand open to receive such when the floods come, and the winds beat upon them. Therefore go forth unto this people, and declare the words which I have spoken unto the ends of the earth." So he's charging them to go and make disciples of all people, just the same as he did with his 12 disciples back in Jerusalem. So he begins to expound his gospel to them so that there will be no more disputations. And that's chapter 11 in a very small nutshell, to be continued.